Hello and welcome to the Responsibility We Carry Athletic Support Service Learning Series. I am your co-host, Travis Ballard, and I currently serve as the N4A ECC Institutional Partnership Program Chair. And our other two hosts are Mr. Quadjo Steele, who serves as our co-chair for the ECC IPP Committee, and Ms. Lucy Mason, who serves as our ECC IPP Learning Series Director and Editor. Today, we bring to you part one of our learning series on HBCUs, and we have a phenomenal leader, a trailblazer in the intercollegiate athletic industry, and a great mentor to me and other administrators across the country, Dr. Janice Lavallee, Senior Associate AD of Student Athlete Experience, SWA at Alabama State University. Dr. G, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Travis, he already laid it out for you.
Okay.
Here's some little bit of research I've done. First of all, Hooper, right? Southern Arkansas University. Probably could still get buckets on folks. I call her Miss Committee. She's been on the committee of academics, women's leaders. I think there's at least 6 others that I talk. I don't know how you do all that at one time. Began a career at Alabama State, where she is now, but at Jackson State, 981 APR for every year that she was there, 3.10. That's the type of stuff you put money on right there. And mind you, I know her as LI family from what is now the Charles Whitcomb Leadership Institute, class of 2012, the family and the best class that ever come through the Leadership Institute. Welcome. And from Louisiana, if you didn't catch the last name, that's a Louisiana name right there. Welcome. Now we call her Dr. G. She wasn't even a doctor when I met her. So out here running things, getting a doctorate, future AD on your hands, but a wonderful person, wonderful soul. Welcome.
Thank you all so much for having me on here today. And you did a great job with the introduction. Both of you all did.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. G. Well, it doesn't take much. Your accolades and resume speak for yourself. So I've had the opportunity to get to know you, to work for you, and we've talked on several occasions about the challenges and systemic forces that affect the working environment and resource development of HBCUs. But we've also talked about the positive impact that HBCUs have had on both of our careers. Could you give me some insight on how HBCUs have positively impacted your job and professional career?
I would say this Alabama State was my first paid position. So they gave me an opportunity to jump into the field when no one else did. I did have an internship before at a PWI, but a HBCU actually took a chance on me. And so not only did I receive my first career move at HBCU, but I also attained education from Grambling State University, my master's degree. And then I had some great professors at that time who just poured a lot into me during that time. And then I also had some great professors at Jackson State while receiving my doctoral degree. So they have given me opportunities that I am so grateful to have. And I'm grateful for the people who I've met as well.
Oh, I'm going to give you some more kudos. Let me know when you get tired. But I want to tell you, you actually started the idea for this version of the series. I believe it was 2021, and N4A could not have an in-person convention. And so our virtual HBCU dinner, if you will, and it was right around the time of George Floyd. And at that point, people were asking us, well, what can we do for you? And you so succinctly said something that I think a lot of us feel when we work in this HBCU space. And you said, well, what can we do for you? If you need me, like, call me in, I'll consult. And to that question, do you think like the experience and expertise of HBCU administrators is valued in the academic support and student development space?
You know, I've been on several different interviews, and I thought that, I might have, nailed it at PWIs. Haven't had opportunity to do that, nail and actually get the actual job. But I do sometimes feel like we have a negative perception because of the APR issues that we might have surrounding our institutions. And I believe that if they only knew how many hats we had to wear in order to really have some success, they would think differently. And I say they, people who might have the negative perception of administrators at HBCUs. But I remember one time, Mr. Ballard, he came to me and he talked to me about how he's like, I really want to work with football, but my supervisor at the time thinking that he could do it. And I had to remind him, you have everything that it takes. We prepared you at Jackson State because you know how to analyze data, you know how to figure out, where the issues might lie, you know how to put programming together. So a lot of things I had to remind him of the things that he does know or he did know. And so that he can feel that confidence, because a lot of times we have so many hats, and if we're doing it with excellence, I don't think that a lot of people understand what we have, what we achieve at these institutions.
Do you feel like the recent research talking about the Black student athlete that says that when you compare APR and graduation rates of Black student athletes, that HBCUs are on top? Do you feel like that's going to be helpful to those cases or that perception?
I believe that will be helpful, but I think that we have to always be intentional, we being administrators at HBCUs. And just like, for instance, when we see different times that we can celebrate our student athletes, putting them out there, so we can tell our story and that they can see us the same. Because a lot of times we're so stressed thin, and so we don't have the time to put all the effort into looking for those different awards and putting the time to get the students to come in. Whereas some of our counterparts, they might have one person just working on that. But we're working on, today I was speaking to recruits all day. I was doing administrative work. It was a lot today on my to-do list. But I think that if we can somehow, while we're in this space, tell our story, continue to tell the positive story of HBCUs and our student athletes, because we have the same students that everybody else had. We have the first generation students, we have the international students. We just have to continue to tell our story. And I feel like with the most recent research, this can maybe help the perception, but also just being intentional about telling our story.
So I do have a follow-up question to that. So, oftentimes I talk with Quadjo about my experience. I'm, just under 5 years in the industry. But one of the things that we talk about is how, my first year here felt like 7 years, just because I had so many different experiences and I was needed in so many different areas. And so can you talk about some of those qualities or some of those experiences that you're able to get at a HBCU in a quicker time, or just in general that you may not be able to get elsewhere?
So I tell and of course, because of this, probably the salary range, we have to hire young sometimes, entry-level professionals. And that's not a bad thing. But I tell those entry-level and anybody who's working in the area, if you really put forth the effort, you can leave here with a ton of experience. You're going to leave here knowing how to be, how to organize. You might even get some game day management. You're going to do a lot of things outside of your academic job description. But if you're open to, just learning all of those different skill sets, you're going to be amazing. I can tell you, Travis, he was there when I first started my PhD at Jackson State. And if it weren't for my team and just having good people around who wanted to learn different skill sets, he would take things and just run with it in terms of like community service. He just laid the plan out, let me know how it's going. He already have written down the steps. And then I had another team who now they are running, and I even had to put them in my dissertation because while I was working on my PhD, I needed them to step in some of the roles that I had, like sports supervision for sport oversight. So I was teaching them how to do those different things. And now they're leading their areas at their respective institutions. So it's a lot of knowledge that you can gain if you are intentional, or instead of feeling like, oh, I have to do all this stuff. It's a grind. It really is. But if you really, once you really say, you know what, this is for our student athletes, and you understand the why, and you want to see those student athletes do well, because when they're crossing that stage, all those long days and long nights, they kind of go away, and I have the tears flowing, because a lot of them, they were just like me, first generation, didn't even know if I was going to go to school. Didn't even have the ACT really not until the last try to do that. So I think about all of my experience and how education brought me to where I am today, and I want the same thing for them. And so all of that, I just, the things that we learn, and how to organize, how to plan, how to do things without money, with limited resources. We are, doing a lot of magic tricks, to try to stay ahead of the game, so a lot of times you see those scores, we don't have a whole bunch of resources to do it. It's about learning how to work with different partners on campus, and just leaders on campus to try to get what we need in order for our students to be successful.
So I love how you talk about, your relationship with Travis when he was at Jackson State. And, it sounds as though you served as that mentor figure for him. So I'm curious, who are the mentors that you reach out to for counsel when it comes to, career advancement and some of the challenges and experiences that you face?
Yeah, so my current AD, which is Dr. Jason Cable, he's somebody who I often talk to. Dr. Adrian Sweeney, she was the person who actually brought me to Jackson State, gave me an opportunity to serve there. Who else? Sterling Stewart, he's currently at Morgan State. The late, great Kenneth Miles, he was someone who always I could call on and talk to him about the different challenges. Danita Townsend, she's no longer in the field, but she was in the field for a very long time, and she actually hired me here at Alabama State for the first time, and really taught me how to look at folders and look at degree plans. And then there's just so many more, not just from at the top level, but I see my team as mentors as well, because we can learn from so many different places. And so, what I loved about the teams at some of my former institutions, we all complimented each other. My strength was just having the vision, and their strength was making it happen. So a lot of different people have played an important role and part in my success.
I love it, Dr. G. One of the things that I've witnessed when I first met you, and I'm glad you mentioned Dr. Adrian Sweeney and Dr. Jason Cable. One thing that I've seen with all of you is your confidence, but also your self-efficacy. And I really think that your leadership, but not only that, your experiences have helped you get to this point. I look at you often as a resuscitator of programs. Like, you've had to go into programs and literally reconstruct the identity of programs. I would love to get into that initial steps, the process of when you get into a program and you see, hey, there's weaknesses here, there's strengths here. What is your initial evaluation process when you're trying to evaluate what's needed?
I always allow data to speak volumes for me, and to help me make decisions. So what I do, and I learned this because of course Alabama State was my first paid position, and like I said, Danita Townsend, she told us, hey, we about to have a folder party, because we really didn't have any files. So that was the genesis of learning how to print curriculums, look at transcripts, go down the line. I'm thinking, oh, I can do this really quickly. Now, over the years, it was very quick to do it, but that she was just laughing. She's like, oh, you gonna get it done that quick? And I was like, yeah, I'll get it done this quick. And she was like, okay. So she just let me believe that was gonna happen. And so that first position, we did this folder party. And so she also just kind of showed us, what to look for. So my next job at Grambling State, something similar, needed to go in to assess, and just look at all of the folders. When I go into a different institution, I always want to make sure I understand what the student athlete, where they stand with progress towards degree. And so I may not know their face, but I know their name, I know what they're doing for their program. And then I also, for APR, I want to know where the holes are, where some opportunities are. So I always just kind of see or tell the story to the coaches. Hey, I'm noticing that, you know, some of the students are losing points because they are in their last, they have exhausted eligibility in their last semester. So how can we improve upon those areas? So I really literally go into who lost a point, what semester they lost a point, why they lost a point, so that I can give a proper analysis to the coaches and to the institution, to anybody who wants to listen. And then we go about just making sure that we have student athlete involvement with SAC, so they can kind of understand what APR is, and then also, you know, what kind of programs they want to see on campus. So then I also just share all of those different numbers, and just I go from there.
And you ran a heck of a campaign. I remember you talking about it was the 976 something campaign in Jackson State, something like that, where it was posted everywhere. Am I missing that?
It was the 930 initiative.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, because before I got to Jackson State, and again, you know, this is so Jason, Dr. Cable, and Dr. Sweeney, they did a lot of the legwork. So when I went to Jackson State, that was one of the programs that was already, they just needed the leader to just make sure that it keeps running and gets better every year. And so, but they had already did the legwork in terms of, you know, doing certification, looking at folders and stuff. Although, like I said, I always redo folders everywhere I go, so I can understand what the needs are. But we had this, but that program was a result of the football team almost going into a penalty structure where it was going to be in an old penalty structure for the NCAA. And so they didn't want to go into that type of structure, because of course it impacts recruiting, it impacts funding for the institution. And so from there on, we just made sure that we got better and better every year. And so it got to the point to where at Jackson State, I didn't know what else I could do, because we had got, the team and we had got programs certified through the national office. We had led the SWAC 5 years in a row, having the highest GPA in the conference. We had the highest FCS APR for football for 5 years in a row while I was there. So I think that a lot of times we just have to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in terms of finding different points. So like, I'll just give you an example. A lot of, I love APR because I love the numbers, but when I got here, I did something similar. And I found 27 delayed graduation points for APR, 14 in football, you know? And so I just know how to attack and how to find those different points, because I don't like losing them, and I don't like losing. So, and I want to make sure that we're very competitive, and people see us as competitors in the APR and academic world.
I'm going to stay on that point, because you made a great point. You spent some time on the committee of academics, right? And what I feel like I learned in my first years at North Carolina Central was that eligibility certification is like a bad game of telephone, right? So like the Power Five find out something at regional rules, and they get dinged, and then they may pass a little bit down to the middle school, the mid majors. The mid majors make a few mistakes, they get dinged, they fix it, then some of that trickle. But I felt like HBCUs were kind of the last group in Division I to find out all the things they were supposed to do from APR. Now that you've spent some time with the academics committee, can you diffuse the rumor, if there, or the version like that all schools know what they're doing? Do you notice now that you've been there that there's kind of every school has some issues in certification on their campuses, and then maybe HBCUs just have the worst of it because of the resources? What has been your experience?
I think that, you know, of course, I don't know about the PWI version about the certification, But I will say that it depends on the relationship with the athletics department and the academic world. And so if the academic side of the house understands why athletics needs things so timely and so quickly, then there's a better system in place. We can get things done a little bit quicker. So from my experience, I just felt like the education piece wasn't there enough education. And so that's something that we've talked about a lot, making sure that everybody has information about the education, and not just talking to us as practitioners, but also including, making it mandatory, or including the registrar's office, anybody who touches certification and our needs, because a lot of times they don't really understand. They just see it as extra work, because they might be wearing multiple hats as well. So it's just about trying to put some processes in place and some systems in place, and to help them understand the why behind everything. So I know that when I first got over here at Alabama State, we just had to do a lot of talking in terms of, just educating them. And so things are getting much better in terms of that. We return things around quicker.
Curious to talk about being a numbers person and, talking about getting campus to understand really what that process looks like. What can we do to help with that? Because, in my experience, retention is big on college campuses in general. However, the way we do it is very specific to athletics, and not necessarily something that maybe campus does on a larger scale when you're looking at the, eligibility point and the retention point. So, what can we do to better support those units on campus?
I think change comes sometimes it comes very slow, and understand that we have to have patience. But t-shirts and food goes a long way. So I like to do some small meetings, very small meetings, so that they can understand. So I may take one department and just explain to them the whole process of what we do. Another thing that I think that has really helped this campus is that we do what we call faculty or coach of the game, which we invite a lot of different, not only faculty, but staff as well. And so every home game, we are recognizing those who have helped us. So it makes them feel a little bit better. So now they're getting a t-shirt, they're getting the food, and now they're getting recognized publicly. And so it's starting to help. I mean, because now they're calling and saying, hey, this person is not doing this, or other other departments on campus, like registrar admissions, they're helping a little bit more. And so, but I think that it's being patient and understanding that change may not happen overnight. And so, but just really taking your time and having those small meetings. So I feel like meeting with departments, that has been very beneficial. And it's not a whole big department, it's just one department, and then answering any questions that they might have. And then also then move into the next department. So I may touch, about 6-7 departments in a year, but I'm going to get to everybody. And then I'm going to answer, just different questions, and they're going to understand. So I'll also tell you research, just doing your own research. So I'll tell you over here, we had a policy where our student athletes could only take, I think 6 to 9 hours for summer. So what I did was I went through the state of Alabama, went through some of our sister institutions in the conference, and showed where, hey, we're not being competitive in this part, because down the street they can take 18, because of course we never know what the student might need. So 6 to 9 may not be the answer. And then the comment was, well, aren't we putting them in a bad position, if they hadn't passed these courses right here? One might think that, but because of athletics, and because of APR, and because of all the funding that's coming through, we have to put our students in position to win. So sometimes when their backs up against the wall, they might do it, and more than likely they will. You might have a few that maybe count on one hand that may not do it, but I feel like research also, and being able to show the numbers, is something that you can also take to the table.
Did I hear you say challenge your student athletes academically and that's how you get results.
Yes,
I just want to make sure I heard that right.
absolutely. Everything is about excellence. So, I remember one time, German Bello, he left Alabama State, he came to Jackson State, and he was like, hey, I'm looking at these football schedules, and they're in 19 hours in the fall. I say, yes, they are. And so because that was the max that they could take. And so he was like, well, are you sure you want to do that? I'm like, absolutely. They have to rise to the occasion, because if we don't think highly of them, who's going to think highly of them? So 3.0 was the goal, and 19 was and I think the NCAA, they came to us one of those years and they said, hey, do you realize that you all are averaging 17 hours enrolling and passing 17 hours for your institution? I was like, yeah, probably so. I mean, because we encourage our students to take the 19 hours, and we just try to trick them. Like, for instance, we don't even say study hall, we say academic practice. And, we didn't. So what we did was we kind of pretty much, I said, I want to make sure everybody is going to academic practice. I want to change the mindset. I want them to say that they're going to practice being good academic students. And so we had these block sessions where they had to do 4 hours mandatory, because a lot of times students are just in there, just, looking at the clock. So instead of them doing that, they had to do 4 hours mandatory. And so what we found was student athletes were coming in there more than the required 4 hours, because now they're in the block with their peers. They know the bowlers. They know that we have a bowling team. They know that we have a tennis team. So we changed all that, and it really became family. And so I've brought it everywhere that I have. I've taken it everywhere I've been, and it's been very successful. We like to challenge students to rise to the occasion.
How we heard this from other schools, and I'll get out of the way at this question, but you're dropping nuggets right here that are showing that expertise. How have your transfers handled that? People that have come from other institutions, have they been shocked by those expectations?
No, they just fall right in line, because that's the expectation. If I tell somebody I just want you to get a 1.8, or they might go to that. But if I tell them 3.0, I'm like, this is where we want to be. And so we do a lot of celebratory, things. Student Athlete of the Month. We have breakfasts for them, and so I remember one time somebody said, I had a 2.9, I got the 3.0 after the summer. I'm like, well, you didn't help us win the SWAC. You were not in that number to win the SWAC conference. So, we can't honor you. So you got to work a little bit harder. So it pushes them. And so their peers also, when that academic practice set up, they push each other. So
Dr. G, I've had the ability to see your career, and one of the things that I've always kept with me during my time working with you, you've always told me to write your story, and it's something that has always followed my career path. And one of the things that we ask in every one of our series to all our interviewees is that, and your footprints is all over this episode, but all over our whole entire series. So I would like to end with this last question, with so many people, writing our stories. And we've talked about it in this discussion, whether that's HBCU administrators' intellectual abilities and career experiences are devalued, whether that's being typecasted, whether that's put in a box, like you mentioned. How have you navigated through that and written your own story and continue to write your story?
You know what? I just said that I'm going to be great where I am. And so there's no way. I mean, I've gone to several different institutions, and I have a chip on my shoulder. So I want to be great, and I want our student athletes to have great people. So if this is my ministry to help HBCUs, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be great doing that. And I want to make sure that our story gets told. So I can't think about what I could be doing. I'm going to do what I can where I'm at.
Excellent. So we're going to get you out of here on 2 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
What is a phrase or a sentence that HBCU practitioners need to hear more of And then that's what's one phrase or sentence they need to hear less of.
More of, you can do anything, you are great. And less of limited resources. We don't have enough resources.
Last question, what's a responsibility that you carry that you wouldn't trade?
Well, my motto is to empower students to grow champions and to develop leaders. And so that is something that I take to the grave with me.
Dr. G, I think you mentioned it. I'm going to be great where my feet are. I think anybody that's coming into this series and feeling like, hey, things aren't going the way my career should be, about, hey, you know what, but I'm just going to be great where I'm at and do the best that I can in that space. Dr. G, thank you so much for coming on to our show. I know our viewers are going to enjoy the content that you provided, the lived experiences, and just the major accomplishments that you've been able to achieve. We would also like to thank and acknowledge the ECC subcommittees that helps support this initiative. Our ECC chair, Ramon Cooper, for his support. One of our previous interviewees, Shanika Mungeon, who currently serves as a board of director on the N4A team, and Jackie Nicholson, who is serving as our N4A president for the 2022-23 academic year. So until next time, take care, everybody.